The slap came so fast I didn't even see her hand move. 1 second my glasses were on my face. The next, they were skidding across the ballroom floor at Harborview Country Club, a lens cracking under the chandelier's white light. The music stopped mid-note. Conversations died. 150 people stared. My cheek burned, but the real pain sat deeper, right under my ribs. That's what you get for being so selfish, my daughter-in-law spat. Brianna stood there in lace and crystals, bouquet in one hand, the other still raised from hitting me. A man your age doesn't need a whole lake house to himself. Stop clinging to it and give Logan the keys. Logan, my only son, her brand new husband. He was close enough to feel how my shoulders shook, close enough to see the crack in my glasses. He didn't say a word. He didn't touch me. He just stared somewhere over my shoulder, jaw tight, as if this scene belonged to someone else's family. I crouched down, fingers groping for the frames. My vision blurred into shoes, chair legs, the edge of the dance floor. A guest slid his chair back so he wouldn't step on the glass. Someone whispered, "Oh, wow." Someone else cleared their throat like they were swallowing a laugh. No one bent down to help. "You're not welcome here anymore," Brianna went on, voice bright and clear like she was giving a toast. "Logan and I are starting our life. We need privacy. Your place is just sitting there. It'd be perfect for us while we find something better." Her words bounced off the vaulted ceiling, off the white flowers, off a room full of people pretending they weren't enjoying the show. I found my glasses by touch. One lens was spiderwebbed, the frame twisted. I slid them back on anyway. Through the cracks, my reflection in the mirrored wall looked exactly how I'd encouraged people to see me for years. Old suit, cheap tie, shoulders a little rounded, harmless, ordinary, easy to overlook. My name is Martin Cole. I'm 69 years old, widower, retired school janitor. Around town, I'm the guy who still fixes leaky faucets for $20 and a slice of pie. I buy my flannels off the clearance rack at the feed store. I drive an old Ford pickup that leaks oil on Logan's perfect driveway. To Brianna, and, judging by his silence, to my son, that's all I am. A man on a small pension, rattling around alone in a big, unsafe lake house he doesn't deserve. That's the picture I painted on purpose. Before I was the man pushing a mop down high school hallways, I spent 30 years quietly buying the parts of this town no one else wanted. My wife, Ellen, used to say, "Invisible money lets you sleep. Flashy money just brings trouble." So we chose invisible. The trouble just arrived in a wedding dress. For months, Brianna had been sanding me down with that bright, polished smile. "Mr. Cole, it's 2025, she'd say, eyeing my truck. "You know, cars come in colors other than rust, right?" Then came the brochures for assisted living places she just happened to leave on my kitchen table. The comments about my memory, my balance, how confused I seemed. Logan started repeating her lines like he'd thought of them himself. "Dad, it's not safe for you out there alone. You'd be happier somewhere with people your age. The house is too much for you now." Their concern always seemed to stop exactly at my property line. "Poor man," a woman whispered behind me now. "He looks so lost." "The bride's right," another voice answered. "That house is wasted on him. He should sell and move into a community." Each sentence landed like grit between my teeth. The air turned thin and sharp. I slipped my hand into the inside pocket of my blazer, the same one Brianna once called cute in a goodwill sort of way, and wrapped my fingers around my phone. There was one number I hadn't dialed in almost a year. I pressed it. "Monroe and Associates, this is Carla," came the familiar, steady voice. "Carla, it's Martin," I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm, almost flat. "I need you at Harborview tonight, and I need you to bring the folder we put together last spring." There was a short silence. Carla Monroe had handled my money and my paperwork for 15 years. She knew exactly which folder I meant. "Martin," she said slowly, "are you sure? Once we use that file, there's no going back to pretending." Across the room, Brianna had already turned away, laughing with her bridesmaids, probably explaining how she finally handled her stubborn father-in-law. Logan stood half a step behind her, smile stretched too tight, eyes carefully avoiding mine. I searched his face for the boy who used to stand in front of me on the playground when other kids made fun of my worn-through work boots. He wasn't there, I'm sure, I told Carla. Give me 30 minutes. I ended the call. The quartet started playing again like nothing had happened. Voices rose in thin, strained conversation. I walked past the tables, past relatives suddenly fascinated by centerpieces, past waiters holding trays too still. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said my name. The ballroom doors closed behind me with a soft thud, and the cool night air slapped the same cheek Brianna had. Out under a flickering street lamp, my old Ford waited, paint faded, bumper held on with 2 bolts and a prayer. I slid into the driver's seat and rested my hands on the cracked steering wheel. 30 minutes. 30 minutes for my son and his bride to enjoy the last half hour of the life they think they've secured. 30 minutes before the man they tried to erase from his own story stops pretending to be poor and shows everyone in that ballroom exactly who he really is. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead, casting a yellow glow across the cracked asphalt as I sat in my truck, watching the ballroom through the windshield. Laughter spilled out every time someone opened the door, sharp and bright like glass clinking before it shatters. 20 minutes left. I leaned back in the seat, letting the engine tick as it cooled, and for the first time in months, I let myself remember where all this really began. Not tonight. Not with the slap. Not even with Brianna's first insult, disguised as concern. No, this story started the day Logan brought her to my lake house 2 years ago. I had grilled burgers on the back deck, the sun painting the water gold. Logan looked proud, excited even, the way he used to when he was a kid showing me an A-plus paper. "Dad, this is Brianna," he'd said, beaming. She stepped forward with a smile so polished you could see your reflection in it. "Wow," she said, on her first breath inside. "This place is rustic." Rustic. That was her polite way of saying old. Outdated. Beneath her. Her eyes wandered like she was assessing what could be sold, renovated, replaced. She paused longest at the framed photo of Ellen on the windowsill. "She's pretty," she murmured, but her expression said something else entirely. Over dinner, she asked too many questions in that sugary voice of hers. "So, Mr. Cole, you said you retired from janitorial work. How do you manage financially now? Is this property fully paid off? Do you have help out here? You know, like medical alert services?" Logan didn't notice the way my fork slowed, or maybe he did, and chose not to. At the time, I told myself she was just curious. Most people don't understand a man who chooses to live simply even when he doesn't have to. But then came the phone call. I overheard 6 months later her voice drifting through the hallway while she stood on my deck, pretending to admire the lake. "He's alone out here," she had whispered. "The place is huge. I swear he's slipping. If we can convince him it's not safe, we could stay here until we get on our feet." My chest had gone cold, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to understand who I was dealing with. And the more I watched, the more I saw. The way she nudged Logan to speak for me when we went out to dinner. The way she lost my mail, twice important mail from the county tax office. The way she'd loudly tell Logan, "He repeated the same story twice, babe. I'm worried." Pretty soon, Logan started echoing her. "Dad, you do forget things. Dad, maybe you shouldn't be driving at night. Dad, it's not healthy being alone in that house." The son, who once defended me from every bully, now defended someone else from me. The turning point came the day I found a real estate brochure on my kitchen counter. The same counter where Ellen and I used to knead dough for homemade bread, where Logan used to sit, swinging his legs while I cut his sandwiches into little squares. Brianna had circled a senior living complex in red ink. "Private rooms!" "On-site nurses." Perfect for older adults transitioning out of independent homes. A sticky note sat on top. "Just thinking of you." My hands had trembled not with age, but with understanding. They weren't just waiting for me to fall. They were pushing. I'd called Carla the very next day. "Open the safety file," I'd told her. "All of it. I want everything updated." Because the truth was simple. For years, I'd been protecting Logan from the full extent of my resources. I didn't want money to change him. I didn't want him to become the kind of man who measured worth in dollars instead of character. But greed has a funny way of sniffing out what you hide. Back in the present, I checked the time. 10 minutes left. Inside the ballroom, silhouettes moved past the windows, dancing, laughing, drinking, celebrating. Brianna had no idea she'd just slapped a man who could buy this building twice over. Logan had no idea he was standing on a rug I could pull out from under him with a single signature. None of them knew who I really was. But in 10 minutes, they would. By the time the clock inside my truck blinked to the 30-minute mark, I could feel something shifting inside me like a quiet door unlocking after years of being jammed shut. I stepped out into the cool night air, leaned against the truck, and watched the ballroom from a distance. The laughter inside sounded almost unreal, as if it belonged to another world. A world where fathers weren't slapped at their son's wedding. A world where love wasn't transactional. A world I had once imagined my boy would grow into. But reality had a different script. It had shown itself clearly 3 months ago, during what Brianna had called an important family conversation. I hadn't known it was an ambush until it was too late. She and Logan had shown up with someone new, a woman in a gray blazer, sharp haircut, and colder eyes than January lake water. "Mr. Cole, I'm Dr. Vanessa Harper," the stranger had said, extending a hand. "I'm a cognitive health consultant. Your family asked me to evaluate your daily functioning." I'd blinked, confused. Evaluate my what? Logan wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, it's just a quick check," he'd said, rubbing his palms together like he always did when he was hiding something. "Brianna and I are worried about you living alone." Worried. Funny how that word becomes a weapon in the right hands. Brianna stepped forward, voice dripping with polished sympathy. "Martin, we just want to make sure you're not losing track of things. You get confused sometimes. Remember last week? You said you misplaced your checkbook." "Yes," I'd said slowly, "because you moved it to a different drawer." Her smile had frozen. "Oh, right. That." Dr. Harper opened a binder. "This won't take long. Just answer a few questions." I glanced at Logan. My son, the boy I once taught to skip stones. My son, the young man I helped through his mother's death. My son, the only family I had left. And he just stood there, letting strangers test if his father still had a mind. I'd held up a hand. "No," I said. "We're not doing this." Brianna stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "If you refuse the wellness evaluation, Martin, it raises concerns. The court takes that very seriously when determining capacity." Court. Capacity. The words slithered under my skin like ice water. I looked at Logan again. "Is this what you want?" He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was worse than anger. It was fear. Fear of losing something. Fear of disappointing someone. But definitely not fear for me. "Dad," he murmured, "we're just trying to help. If something happened to you alone in that big house..." The house. Always the house. I had swallowed hard. "If you're truly worried about me," I said quietly, "why don't you ever ask me what I want?" Brianna folded her arms. "What about what's best for us?" There it was. The truth. Unfiltered. Ugly. The evaluation had ended right there, but the message was clear. If I didn't step aside, they were prepared to push me aside. 2 weeks later, Joseph, my neighbor, and old fishing buddy, knocked on my door, breathless. "Martin," he said, "you won't believe what I saw." He'd been in the parking lot of Lakeside Realty when he spotted Brianna getting out of her car with a well-dressed man carrying a measuring wheel and a clipboard. A property assessor. "She was pointing toward your place from across the lake," Joseph said, like she was giving him specs. I didn't react. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I just nodded. Because by then, the picture had already formed. They weren't waiting for me to get weak. They were preparing to prove that I already was. I'd called Carla the next morning. "Open a second file," I told her. The defensive one. She had hesitated, voice unusually soft. "Martin, are you sure?" "Yes," I'd said. "I think I've been sure for a long time." Now, leaning against my truck, as silhouettes danced inside the glowing ballroom, I felt a strange calm settle over me. They had planned their moves carefully. They had set their trap with patience. They believed they had me cornered. But they never planned for one thing, that the quiet old janitor they underestimated was holding cards they didn't even know existed. And in just a few minutes, the whole deck would flip. Carla's headlights appeared exactly when she said they would, 30 minutes sharp. Her silver sedan turned into the parking lot with the same quiet precision she ran her entire practice with. The door opened, and she stepped out carrying a thick, weatherproof briefcase strapped with 2 buckles. She didn't walk. She approached, deliberate, controlled, like someone who understood the gravity of the moment long before I ever admitted it to myself. "Martin," she said when she reached me, her voice steady as a surgeon's, "before I open this, I need to hear you say it again. Are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" I looked through the ballroom windows. I could see Brianna twirling on the dance floor, drunk on her own victory. I saw guests laughing with the kind of relief people feel after witnessing someone else's humiliation. It meant they weren't the target. And standing beside his bride, stiff posture hiding a trembling hand, was my son. The boy I once carried on my shoulders. The boy who placed dandelions on his mother's grave every spring. The boy who now let his wife slap me without flinching. I turned back to Carla. "Yes," I said. "They want to see who I am? Tonight they will." Carla nodded once and unbuckled the briefcase. Inside lay the file I had hoped I'd never need. A file that could dismantle everything Logan and Brianna thought they controlled. She pulled out the first document, its header printed in bold navy ink, Cole Holdings, Trust Confidential Assets Summary. "Let's start with the basics," she said, handing it to me. "You've kept everything hidden for years. Tonight is the first time any of this will see daylight." I opened it, even though I knew every line by heart. Property: Cole Lake House, valued at $1.6 million, Harbor Street commercial block, 5 storefronts generating $32,000 per month. 2 duplex rentals on Alder Lane, 40 acres of undeveloped land near the state forest. Savings and investments: $4.2 million spread across 4 investment accounts. $780,000 in a private pension fund. $350,000 in physical bonds and certificates. Business ownership: a 40% silent stake in 3 local shops, including the town's largest hardware store. In other words, the old janitor they mocked owned half the shoreline, a chunk of downtown, and enough investments to disappear into the sunset 10 times over. But that wasn't the part that made my pulse quicken. Carla reached deeper into the briefcase and pulled out another folder, slimmer but far more important. "These," she said, tapping it, "are the documents that matter tonight." I flipped it open. Inside were printed statements, each one signed by me, authorizing cancellation of every automatic payment I'd been making on Logan's behalf, termination of the guarantee I'd quietly provided for his house rental, withdrawal of financial coverage for Brianna's student loans, suspension of the $3,800 monthly transfers that had kept them afloat. For years I'd been saving them from drowning, and for years they had mistaken my hand for a rung in their ladder. Carla also included copies of invoices from the last 12 months, money they didn't even realize came from me. The wedding photographer, the venue deposit, the down payment on Brianna's engagement ring, the anonymous donor who covered their medical bills after Logan's appendectomy. The credit card payments they assumed were processed through Logan's employer. Every page was a quiet reminder of who had been carrying whom. Carla closed the briefcase and locked it. "Martin," she said softly, "I've worked with wealthy clients for 25 years, but I've never met someone who kept every blessing hidden under so many layers of humility." "Humility wasn't the reason," I replied. "Ellen and I believed wealth shouldn't change how people treat you. We were wrong." For the first time since she arrived, Carla's face tightened with anger, not at me, but for me. "Then let's show them the truth," she said. Before I could answer, footsteps approached behind us. I turned. It was Joseph, my neighbor, my friend, the man who'd warned me when the first cracks formed months ago. He held a brown envelope in his hands, breath visible in the cold night. "Found what you asked for," he said, handing it over. Inside were photos, timestamps, and witness notes, everything he'd documented the day he saw Brianna touring my property with a real estate assessor. Proof. Hard proof. Proof that she didn't just covet my house, she had already begun the process of taking it. Carla glanced inside and nodded approvingly. "Between your financial documents and Joseph's evidence," she said, "you're holding enough leverage to collapse every lie they've built." I looked toward the ballroom one last time. The music swelled. The guests twirled. My son held a champagne flute, smiling like a man standing on solid ground. He didn't know yet that the ground beneath him was made of ice. And tonight, it was going to crack. Carla tucked the folders neatly under her arm, the way someone carries a verdict. Joseph tightened his jacket, shot me a steady nod, and headed toward the entrance doors with us. The walk across the parking lot felt unreal quiet, heavy, purposeful, like the slow march someone makes right before cutting the wire that stops a bomb from ticking. The ballroom lights glowed warm and golden, but everything inside them was about to turn cold. As we reached the glass doors, the music inside shifted into something upbeat, a pop song Brianna had probably chosen. It pulsed through the floor, oblivious to the storm waiting outside. Carla paused, turning to me one final time. "Martin," she said, "once we step through those doors, everything changes. Your son will never see you the same way again." I breathed out slowly. He hasn't seen me for a long time. And with that, I pushed the doors open. The sudden silence was instant and absolute, like someone had reached over the soundboard and slammed the master switch to off. Every pair of eyes turned toward us. Carla in her tailored gray suit, Joseph with his envelope of evidence, and me, the man they thought they could shove into a retirement brochure. Brianna was the first to react. She stiffened, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. "Oh, for God's sake," she said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "You again? Didn't we already finish the part where you ruined the pictures?" A few guests chuckled tiny, nervous laughs from people who didn't want to be caught on the wrong side. Logan stepped closer to her, brow furrowed, but he didn't speak. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct her. He didn't even blink. Carla stepped forward first, her voice calm and razor sharp. "Excuse me. I'm looking for Mr. Logan Cole and Mrs. Brianna Cole." Logan blinked at her. That's us," he said, voice shaky. "Who are you?" "I'm Carla Monroe," she said. "Mr. Martin Cole's financial and legal advisor." A ripple went through the crowd, murmurs, shifting chairs, someone gasping softly. Brianna scoffed. "Financial advisor? For him?" She pointed directly at me. "You must be lost." Carla didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break her calm. "I assure you, Mrs. Cole, I am exactly where I need to be." Then she opened the briefcase. The metallic click echoed like a gunshot. "First," she announced, pulling out the lease termination notice, "Mr. Logan Cole, you are hereby notified that the guarantee for your rental property has been revoked." Effective immediately. Logan's eyes went wide. What do you mean revoked?" "We can't keep the house without a guarantor." "That is correct," Carla replied. "You now have 30 days to provide a new one or vacate." Whispers broke out across the room, sharp and electric. Brianna's face reddened. "Is this some kind of joke?" "We don't need his help." Carla cut her off. "Next item." She held up a printed sheet, tall columns of payments, transfers, deposits. "For the past 28 months, Mr. Cole, your father has been paying a total of $3,800 a month toward your expenses. This includes your credit cards, insurance, medical fees, and," she glanced at another page, "a portion of tonight's wedding deposit." A stunned silence followed. Then someone from the back whispered loudly, "Wait, the old man paid for the wedding?" Brianna spun toward Logan. "You told me you got approved for the wedding loan." Logan swallowed hard. I thought I was. I didn't know." "He didn't know because he never asked." Carla lifted her voice again. "And all financial support has been discontinued, effective immediately. These are the official notices." She handed them to Logan, but he didn't take them. His hand shook too badly. Then Joseph stepped forward. "Time for my part." He opened his envelope and pulled out photographs, the ones he'd taken from across the lake. "Here's Brianna with a real estate assessor," Joseph said, "measuring your father's property behind his back, planning the sale before the wedding even happened." Gasps rippled through the room. People craned their necks. A few even stood up. Logan looked at his wife in horror. "Bri, is that true?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It was just an idea," she snapped. "Your dad can barely handle the place. We were helping him." "By selling his home?" I asked quietly. My voice, soft as it was, sliced through the ballroom like a blade. For the first time all evening, Logan finally looked at me, not through me, not past me, but at me, and he looked terrified. Because he finally understood. He hadn't married a partner. He'd partnered with a predator, and he'd helped her hunt his own father. The crowd leaned in, breath held, waiting for what would happen next. And I realized this wasn't even the real twist. Not yet. Not by a long shot. For a long moment, no one in the ballroom moved. It was as if the air itself had turned to glass, thin, fragile, ready to shatter with the next breath. Logan stared at the photos Joseph held up, blinking like the images were too bright to look at directly. "Bree, why were you at my dad's property with an assessor?" he asked, voice cracking like a teenager's. Brianna's chest rose and fell too fast, her perfect bridal composure slipping like cheap wallpaper. "It's not what it looks like," she snapped, which of course meant it was exactly what it looked like. Someone in the front row whispered, "She was scouting the place before they even owned it," and the whisper spread like a fuse catching fire. Brianna's cheeks flushed a blotchy red. She turned on Joseph first. You're just some nosy old man who can't mind his business." Joseph lifted an eyebrow, the same look he used to give me when I miscast a fishing line. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "I minded my business just fine. You're the one who stepped onto property that wasn't yours." The room crackled with murmurs. Then Brianna pivoted to Logan, stabbing the air with her finger. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Your father is vulnerable. He's confused. He forgets things. He doesn't manage the house anymore. I was preparing for the future." "The future," I repeated quietly. "That didn't include me." My voice wasn't loud, but the ballroom rearranged itself around it, every conversation falling silent. For the first time, Brianna looked straight at me, not with fake sweetness, not with polished charm, with pure, unvarnished frustration. "You should be in assisted living," she said sharply. "Everyone here can see it. You can't even keep track of your own documents. You barely drive. Carla stepped forward, voice smooth as steel. "Mrs. Cole, that is false. I meet with Mr. Cole monthly. His cognitive and financial assessments are pristine. He is more organized than half my clients under 40. A few people clapped. They tried to hide it. They failed. Brianna's lips trembled with rage. "That file doesn't mean anything," she snapped. "You're just covering for him. He's old and stubborn and legally competent," Carla finished, "which is more than I can say for your financial situation." Logan swallowed. "Carla, what does she mean by that?" "Oh, Logan." My son looked like a man watching the floor dissolve under him in real time. Carla flipped another page in her folder. "Mr. Cole," she said with crisp precision, "your debts exceed $90,000. You have 4 maxed-out credit cards. You are 3 months behind on rent. And your car—" "My car?" he croaked, "is scheduled for repossession next Tuesday." The room erupted in gasps. Brianna turned on him with whiplash speed. "You said you took care of it," she screeched. Logan's shoulders caved in. I thought I had. I thought the payments were going through." "They were," Carla said. "From your father's account. The music, the lights, the decorations, everything suddenly felt hollow around us. People were no longer guests at a wedding. They were spectators at a slow-motion disaster." Logan stared at the floor, stunned. "My dad paid all that?" he whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question wasn't for Carla. It was for me. A father's heart is a complicated thing. Forgiveness sits right next to disappointment. Love right next to disbelief. "I didn't tell you," I said softly, "because I hoped you'd grow out of needing help, not grow into expecting it." His eyes glistened, not fully tears, but close. Brianna scoffed. "Oh, please. You're all acting like he's some hero. He's manipulated you, Logan. He's lying. He's—" "Enough. It wasn't me who said it. It was Logan." He didn't shout. He didn't rage. But something in his voice made the whole room freeze again. "Bree," he said quietly, "did you really go behind my back and try to sell my father's home?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her silence was an admission louder than any scream. Logan's shoulders shook once, barely, and then he turned to me. "Dad," he whispered, I didn't know everything, but I know she shouldn't have hit you. I should have." His voice broke. For a moment, we were close again. 2 people standing in the middle of a disaster, trying to recognize each other. Then Brianna seized his arm. "Logan, don't you dare," she hissed. "This old man is trying to turn you against your wife on your wedding night." I raised an eyebrow. "This old man," I said, "hasn't even started yet." The ballroom went silent, because they all felt it. The ground shifting, the temperature dropping, the truth rising like a wave that was about to crash. You could almost hear the temperature drop. A cold, invisible curtain fell over the ballroom as Brianna clung to Logan's arm like a lifeline. Her perfect bridal image was cracking at the seam's foundation, melting, breath hitching, pupils sharp and wild. "Logan," she whispered harshly, "don't let him twist this. He's dangerous when he's cornered." Dangerous. That was a new one. I'd been called old, confused, outdated, fragile, but dangerous. Well, that was interesting. Carla raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Cole, dangerous would imply Mr. Cole is unpredictable. He is the most prepared person in this room." Guests shifted uneasily, the kind of tension that sticks to the walls. Then Logan exhaled. One long, heavy breath, like someone waking up from a long, blurry dream. "Dad," he said slowly, I want to hear everything. All of it. From you. Not Brianna. Not Dr. Harper. Not anyone else. Me." For the first time all night, the crowd wasn't looking at Brianna. They were looking at him, the groom whose wedding was unraveling in front of 150 people holding their cameras sideways. Brianna felt the shift immediately. She yanked her hand from his. "Logan, don't be stupid. He's trying to embarrass you so he can what?" Logan asked quietly. "Protect himself from being shoved into assisted living? Protect his own home from being sold behind his back? Protect his dignity?" She blinked at him, stunned. "He's manipulating you." "No," he said, and there was something in his tone I hadn't heard in a long time. Clarity. "What manipulates a man," Logan continued, "is believing someone loves him while she's slowly carving up his father's life." A murmur rippled through the room, soft, sharp, biting. Then Carla handed me the small, leather-bound folder I'd kept hidden for years. Not the financial one, not the evidence one, the last resort one. I opened it in front of the crowd. Inside were Brianna's text messages to her mother about getting the house by summer, voicemails from Logan's landlord, thanking the father for covering rent, screenshots of Brianna Googling legal steps to declare parent incompetent, an email from her to the property assessor, dated months before the wedding. "The owner is old and confused. Shouldn't be hard." The gasp that followed was collective, like the entire room inhaled at once. Logan's face drained of all color. "You emailed someone about my father?" he whispered. I was researching options," she stammered. "Just in case. Logan, we were struggling. I thought—" "No," he cut her off, voice trembling. "You didn't think. You planned." And there it was, the truth landing squarely in the open. The dam had broken. Now the flood came. I looked at Carla. "Show the last part." Carla nodded, pulling out my updated legal declaration. "The Cole Lake House," she read loudly, "has been officially transferred to the Cole Senior Protection Trust and assigned to remain in Martin Cole's possession for the entirety of his life." Logan blinked. "What?" "And," Carla continued, "should anything happen to Mr. Cole, the property and all assets tied to it will bypass his son and daughter-in-law entirely." Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. "Who does it go to?" someone whispered. Carla smiled faintly. "To community programs for at-risk seniors in Marlowe County." A few people actually clapped. Brianna let out a strange sound, half yelp, half sob. "You can't do that," she shrieked. "You don't even have grandchildren yet. That house belongs to your future family." I looked at her, slowly, purposefully. "I won't leave anything," I said softly, "to a family built on greed." Logan flinched as if struck. Brianna shook her head violently. No, this isn't happening." "Logan, tell him to stop. Tell him he can't." But Logan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It was regret. Raw, unfiltered, terrifying regret. "Dad," he whispered, I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know what she was doing. I didn't know I was hurting you." You didn't ask to know, I replied. Brianna lunged toward him. Logan, are you really going to let him humiliate us like this in front of everyone? I stepped forward. This isn't humiliation, I said. This is truth, and truth doesn't care who's watching. The crowd held its breath. Brianna stood frozen in her wedding dress, mascara streaking down her face, surrounded by the ruins of the life she tried to steal. Logan stood beside her, but separate now, emotionally a mile away. And me? For the first time in years, I felt light, like a man finally stepping out of a lie he'd lived in for too long. But the night wasn't done, not even close. The ballroom doors were still closed behind us, but it felt like every person in that room had been dragged to the very edge of something raw and irreversible. Brianna stood trembling in the middle of the dance floor. Her dress, once pristine, now wrinkled and stained from tears and sweat. The perfect bride mask had cracked completely, and what was left underneath was something unfiltered, desperate, and feral. Logan didn't touch her. He didn't reach for her. He didn't speak. He looked like a man seeing a stranger wearing his wife's face. I could almost hear the moment his heart split into two separate truths. The father he'd doubted, and the woman he'd trusted. The silence stretched long enough for people to start whispering again. Phones were out. Hands were covering mouths. Even the DJ froze behind his booth. Brianna finally snapped. This is all your fault, she spat at me. Her voice cracked. Her hands shook. You did this to us. You made Logan look stupid. You ruined our wedding. I didn't flinch. No, I said softly. You ruined it the moment you decided my life was something you could carve up for your own convenience. Her breath hitched. She wasn't used to being spoken to plainly, but she wasn't done. You don't understand what it's like, she hissed. We're drowning, Logan and I. Drowning. You think it's easy to start a life in this economy? You think we had a choice? You had everything, Martin, everything, and you hid it like some kind of selfish old... Logan stepped toward her. Stop. No, she snapped. He needs to hear it. Then she turned fully toward me, rage flashing like a match too close to gasoline. You could have made our lives so much easier. You could have helped us. You could have given us a head start. But instead you hoard money and pretend to be poor, and then act like we're the villains for trying to survive. Her voice spiraled higher, faster, sharper. You think you're noble? You think you're teaching us a lesson? You're pathetic. A lonely old widower with no friends and no life, and a house that should have gone to someone who actually needs it. Bree. Enough, Logan said again, louder this time. But she was far past listening. You're not even worth what you're sitting on, she screamed. You should have handed the property over and gone somewhere safe, instead of clinging to a house you can't maintain. Something inside me snapped. Not anger. Not pain. Clarity. Brianna, I said, you don't want a home. You want ownership of the man who owns it. The entire room froze. Her jaw locked. Her cheeks blotched red. Her fingers curled so tight her knuckles whitened. You... she started. But Carla cut in. Actually, Carla said, her voice velvet wrapped around steel, there's something else we haven't addressed yet. She opened another folder, a smaller one, a more delicate one. A court notice filed by Dr. Vanessa Harper, the cognitive health consultant. Mrs. Cole, Carla said. This is the preliminary petition to evaluate Mr. Cole's mental competency, filed the same week you contacted the property assessor. Logan's head whipped toward Brianna so fast I thought he might hurt himself. What? He whispered. It's just paperwork, Brianna insisted. Just in case. The lawyer said. You filed a petition, Logan said, his voice hollowing out, to declare my father incompetent. She hesitated a second too long. I talked to the lawyer, she admitted, but only because your dad refuses to make responsible decisions. I was protecting us. By taking away his rights? Logan asked, voice cracking. He doesn't need them anymore, she blurted. A ripple of disgust moved through the crowd. Someone muttered, Oh, she's done. Another voice whispered, She's digging her own grave. Logan took a step back from her. Then another. Bree, he said slowly, shaking his head. You tried to take everything from my father. You lied to me. You manipulated me. You... Suddenly, Brianna's voice dropped into a trembling whisper. I did it for us, she said. For our future. For you. No, he said. For yourself. Her face collapsed. Desperation clung to her like smoke. Logan, she pleaded, voice breaking into a sob. Baby, please. You're my husband. Stick with me. Don't let him turn you against me. Logan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Then he looked at me. Not with anger. Not with blame. With something far heavier. Recognition. Dad, he whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. Brianna grabbed his arm again. Logan, don't do this. He pulled away. I don't even know who you are right now, he said. Brianna choked out a sob, mascara streaking her cheeks. The crowd held its breath. The DJ shut off the lights, leaving only the chandeliers glowing down on the ruins of their fairy tale. And in that still, glittering quiet, I realized something. Tonight wasn't the collapse of their illusion. It was the rebirth of my son. But the night still had one twist left. One final truth they never saw coming. The chandeliers above us flickered like they were unsure whether to keep illuminating the mess below. Every guest stood frozen in that glittering half-light, caught between disbelief, curiosity, and the morbid fascination that only real-life disaster can provide. Brianna's mascara streaks had turned into black rivers carving down her face. Logan stood a few feet away from her, looking like a bridge that had finally buckled under too much weight. But the night wasn't done revealing what it had been holding. Not even close. Carla stepped forward again with that quiet, unstoppable confidence of a woman who has already won the war. She held a final folder in her hand, thinner, more dangerous, like a matchstick dipped in gasoline. Mrs. Cole, she said, before we end this discussion, there is one last matter, something Mr. Cole asked me to investigate 2 months ago. Logan blinked. 2 months ago? I nodded once. Because 2 months ago is when the real betrayal began. Carla opened the folder, revealing a stapled stack of printed reports. This, she announced, is a record of every phone call, email, and office visit that Brianna has made in the last year to attorneys and elder law consultants. A gasp rippled through the room. Brianna stepped back like the papers were poisonous. You had no right to look into my private. Carla didn't flinch. On the contrary, you involved Mr. Cole in attempted legal action without his knowledge. That made it our business. She lifted one page. 3 months ago, Mrs. Cole met with Attorney Saunders and asked about the legal pathway to secure what she referred to as premature guardianship over Mr. Cole. The room erupted. Guardianship? Someone hissed. That's for people who can't make decisions. She wanted control of everything. Oh, she's finished. Brianna shook her head violently. No, that's not Logan. Listen to me. That's not what it was. But Carla hadn't finished. She lifted the next page. And 4 weeks after that meeting, she requested the standard guardianship application forms. Those forms include full control over Mr. Cole's finances, power to sell his home, medical authority, and legal decision-making rights. Logan's face cracked open. You wanted legal control over my father? His voice shook. Bree, why? She reached for him again, but he pulled away before she touched him. It wasn't like that, she insisted. I was trying to protect us. Protect you. If your father lost the house. The house? Logan snapped. Everything for you comes back to the damn house. Brianna opened her mouth, but Carla held up a third sheet. And this is the email Mrs. Cole sent the day after Martin refused to move out. She read it aloud, her voice crisp and devastating. If we can get him declared incompetent, Logan and I can manage his estate. The lawyer said it's easier when there's cognitive decline. I'll start documenting every confused moment. The ballroom gasped as one. Even the decor seemed to pause. Brianna went pale white as the lace on her ruined gown. That's taken out of context, she cried. That is not. It's your email, Carla said. Your words, forwarded from your own account. Logan staggered back a step, gripping a chair like he needed it to stay upright. You planned this, he whispered. You made me think Dad was slipping. You planted doubts. You told me he repeated stories, left the stove on, misplaced his wallet. I didn't make anything up, Brianna shrieked. I just emphasized things. He is old. He's not incompetent, Logan shouted. and the pain in his voice was unbearable. "He's my father." Brianna looked around wildly, searching for an ally, but every face she found had turned cold. And then, right then, Joseph stepped forward again. "There's more," he said, pulling out a USB drive. "This is from my porch camera." Brianna froze. Her face drained to ash. Joseph continued, "It shows you entering Martin's porch last month. You removed letters from his mailbox. Legal letters, bank letters." A wave of murmurs surged. "You stole my mail?" I asked quietly. Brianna's chest heaved. I was trying to help. I didn't want you confused by—" "No," Logan said hollowly. "You wanted documented proof he couldn't manage his own affairs." Her silence answered everything. Logan covered his mouth with his hand. I saw the moment the last thread snapped inside him. "Dad," he whispered, "she tried to trap you, and I let her." Before I could speak, Brianna lunged forward in a panic. "Logan, please. This is all happening because he's turning you against me. He wants to ruin our future. He—" "No," Logan said, stepping back from her. "You ruined it." And that broke her. She crumpled to her knees in the middle of the dance floor, sobbing, clutching her dress like she could sew her life back together with her bare hands. The crowd watched in stunned silence, and I realized something heavy and sharp. This was the moment they weren't just learning who Brianna really was. They were learning who Logan had become. But the night wasn't finished teaching him. For a long time, the only sound in the ballroom was Brianna's sobbing, sharp, uneven breaths scraping against the pristine floor she'd imagined herself gliding across for the rest of her life. Her wedding dress pooled around her like a defeated flag. Logan stood several feet away, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. He looked like a man staring at the blueprint of his life and realizing it was drawn with disappearing ink. The guests, unsure whether to leave or stay, hovered in silence. Their eyes darted between us like they were watching the final act of a tragedy they didn't pay for but couldn't look away from. Carla closed her folder with a soft, definitive click. Joseph stepped back, hands tucked in his coat pockets. And I just watched my son crumble. He finally turned toward me. Not the way a child turns to a parent for help. Not the way a man turns toward someone he respects. He turned toward me like someone who'd just realized he'd been walking in the wrong direction for years and suddenly found the road back home. "Dad," his voice cracked. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I told him gently. Brianna let out a strangled sob. "You're choosing him over me? After everything I did for us?" Logan finally faced her. "What you did," he said slowly, "was try to take everything from my father. Everything." "And what did he ever do for us?" she screamed. "Huh? What did he ever give you?" Joseph snorted softly. Carla didn't bother hiding her eye roll. I didn't react. I was watching Logan, because I knew exactly what she'd done with that question. She had thrown him one last rope, and for a flicker of a moment he reached for it. Logan's voice trembled. "I thought he didn't trust me. I thought he kept money from me because he didn't believe I could handle responsibility." I stepped closer. Slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile. "That wasn't why," I said. Logan swallowed hard. "I know," he whispered. "Now I know. You were protecting me from becoming something I didn't even realize I was becoming." His voice thickened. No tears yet, but close. "I let her talk me into thinking you were weak. I let her convince me you needed oversight. I let her—" He squeezed his eyes shut. "Dad, I didn't stand up for you. Not once." "Then stand now," I said softly. His eyes snapped open, wide, raw. "Son," I continued, "every man makes mistakes, but who you become after seeing the truth, that's what defines you." Logan's breath hitched. Then, finally, he broke. Not loudly, not theatrically, just one quiet, unmistakable sob, the kind a grown man makes when he realizes he's not broken, just lost. He stepped toward me. One step, two, then he stopped inches in front of me, shaking. "Dad," he whispered, voice crumbling. "I'm sorry." I placed a hand on his shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness needs time to breathe. But it was something else. Recognition. Understanding. The first stone laid on the path back. Behind him, Brianna rose to her feet, hair wild, dress ruined, eyes burning with something feral. "You're making a mistake, Logan," she spat. "He's manipulating you. He's the reason you're broke. He's the reason we're stuck. He's the reason—" "No," Logan said firmly. "I am." The room stilled. Logan turned to face the guests, those who had watched, gossiped, whispered, and judged. "I let my wife convince me my father was a burden," he said. "I let greed blind me. I let my fear of failure make me cruel. And I let someone else dictate how I treated the man who raised me." His voice shook, but he kept going. "That ends tonight." A wave of murmurs rolled through the room, soft, stunned, respectful. Logan turned back to me. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Between us?" I studied his face, the same face Ellen traced with her fingers the day he was born. "What happens," I said, "depends on what you do next." He nodded slowly. "Not a promise, but a beginning." Then, behind us, the ballroom doors swung open, and the person who stepped in next was someone none of us expected. The heavy ballroom doors swung open with a thud that sliced straight through the charged silence. Every head turned. Even the chandeliers seemed to pause mid-glow. A tall figure stepped inside, broad-shouldered, salt and pepper hair, suit sharp enough to cut glass. For a split second, my breath stalled, because I knew that walk. I knew that posture. I knew that face. Samuel Harrington, my late wife Ellen's older brother. The man who hadn't attended a family gathering in nearly a decade. The man who disappeared after Ellen's funeral, carrying his grief like a stone he couldn't put down. And the one person Brianna absolutely did not expect to see. He wasn't just an uncle. He was a retired federal investigator. A bulldog with a badge. A man who could smell a lie before the liar even opened their mouth. He walked straight toward me with long, decisive strides, ignoring the stunned murmurs and wide-eyed guests. "Cliff," he said, gripping my shoulder. His voice was steady, grounded, strong. "I saw the videos." "Ah, the videos. The ones recorded by guests who wanted internet glory. The ones that had circulated the city within hours. The ones that showed the slap, the humiliation, and the truth pouring out like floodwater." Samuel tightened his jaw. "You should have called me," he said quietly. I gave a hollow smile. "You disappeared, and now I'm back." Behind us, Brianna froze. Her face drained as recognition hit her like a brick. Because of course she knew who he was. She'd Googled me early in her relationship with Logan. She'd researched my extended family. She'd discovered Samuel's name in one of Ellen's old photo albums. She probably assumed he was long gone, irrelevant, maybe even dead. Wrong. Very wrong. Samuel turned his gaze toward Logan first, not with anger, but with the disappointment men like him used as a weapon. "You let your wife do this?" he asked. Logan swallowed hard. "No, Uncle Sam. I let myself do it. I'm not blaming her anymore." Samuel nodded once short, curt. A gesture of respect returned in small doses. Then he faced Brianna. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply let silence do what silence does best. "Amplify guilt." "I've been doing some digging," Sam finally said. His tone carried the cool precision of a man delivering evidence, not opinions. 3 months ago, you consulted an attorney about elderly guardianship petitions." Brianna stiffened. "You also contacted a private financial investigator to track Cliff's assets." Her lip quivered. "And last week, you met with a developer who's been trying for years to buy Cliff's workshop property." Gasps rippled across the room. I stared at Sam, stunned. "How did you—" "I never really left," Samuel murmured. "I just stepped back long enough to see who would step forward, for the wrong reasons." Brianna's voice finally cracked open. "You can't be serious. You can't just accuse me." "I'm not accusing," Sam said, lifting a manila envelope. "I'm proving." He handed it to Carla, who opened it slowly, methodically, like peeling the lid off a pressure cooker. Inside were photographs, bank statements, copies of emails, transcripts, screenshots of messages Brianna had sent to her friends, including one that made Logan stagger back as if struck. "He's dumb enough to trust me. Once we lock down the property, I'll make sure he signs whatever we need." Logan ran a shaking hand over his mouth. You were planning this before we even got engaged," he whispered. Brianna snapped. "It was just talk. Just a joke." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "A joke you emailed to a real estate broker." Her knees buckled, and she grasped the edge of a table to stay upright. I stepped forward. My voice was quiet, dead quiet. Why? The question hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Brianna whispered, "Because I grew up with nothing. Because I promised myself I'd never struggle again. And Logan? He was my chance." My stomach twisted, not in anger, in recognition, because desperation can turn people into monsters. Samuel exhaled sharply and turned to me. "You want to press charges?" The room froze. Logan's eyes widened, half fear, half relief that the decision wasn't his. All eyes turned to me, the man Brianna had slapped, manipulated, cornered, and underestimated. I met Samuel's gaze. Not with fury, not with revenge. With clarity? "No," I said. The room broke into shocked murmurs. "But," I added, staring straight at Brianna, "she leaves my life permanently. No contact. No negotiations. No second chances. And she walks out of here tonight without taking a single thing that doesn't belong to her." Brianna blinked, stunned. Samuel folded his arms. "That's the deal. Take it or face charges." And then, for the first time all night, Brianna understood she had lost. Completely, she sank into a chair, trembling. Logan didn't go to her. He didn't comfort her. He turned to me, eyes glassy, voice breaking. "Dad, what now?" I looked at him, the man my son had become, standing at the crossroads of ruin and redemption. "Now," I said softly, "now comes the part where you decide who you want to be." The ballroom exhaled, but the night wasn't over, not by a long shot. Brianna left the ballroom like a storm, losing its strength, still loud, still furious, but unraveling with every step. Her heels clacked sharply against the marble floor, echoing through the hall until the front doors swallowed her whole. Silence settled again, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence from earlier. This one felt suspended, like everyone was waiting to see if this night would end with ruin or rebirth. Samuel stood beside me, arms crossed, gaze fixed on Logan. He didn't have to say a word. Some men are their own verdict. Logan wiped at his face, trying to keep himself from fully breaking. But grief, real grief, doesn't listen to pride. "Dad," he whispered, "I don't know how to undo all of this." "You don't undo it," I said gently. "You start again." He swallowed hard, staring at the floor. "I should have protected you." I shook my head. "No, you just forgot who you were for a while. Pain can fix that, if you let it." A few guests, those brave or nosy enough to linger, watched us like witnesses at a quiet funeral. Not of a marriage, but of an old version of my son. "Logan," Samuel finally said, stepping forward, "you've been given something most people never get." Logan blinked. "What?" "A chance to rebuild before life destroys you completely." My son let out a shaky breath, nodding slowly. But before he could speak again, Joseph reappeared through the ballroom doors with a tight expression. "Cliff, there's someone waiting outside for you." "Now?" I asked. He nodded. "It's urgent." Samuel exchanged a glance with me, one of those silent brace-yourself looks older men pass between trenches. We stepped outside into the cool night air. And there, standing beneath the amber glow of the parking lot lights, was a woman holding a baby. She couldn't have been more than 24. Her curled hair pulled into a nervous bun, her clothes practical but neat. She adjusted the infant on her hip before stepping toward us. "Mr. Walker?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said, already feeling my pulse shift into something uncertain. She hesitated, breath trembling. "My name is Eliza Carter, and this is Oliver." My lungs forgot how to work. "Oliver?" I repeated. She nodded. "Your grandson." The world tilted. Not violently, but like a slow turn of a camera lens bringing a new truth into focus. Samuel stiffened beside me. "And Logan?" I asked quietly. "Doesn't know," she whispered. "He never knew. We dated before Brianna. He broke it off when she came back around. I found out I was pregnant 2 months later." I stood in stunned silence, watching the baby tiny fingers curled like unopened petals sleeping against her shoulder. Eliza swallowed hard. "I wasn't going to come tonight. I didn't want to cause trouble. But after seeing the videos," her voice cracked, "I couldn't keep this from you. Not anymore." Behind me, the ballroom door creaked. Logan stepped out. He saw Eliza. He saw the baby. And he froze. Eliza? He choked out. She didn't move. Logan, she whispered, voice trembling. This is your son. Logan staggered forward as if gravity had lost patience with him. Mine, he whispered. She nodded. He has your eyes. Logan's face crumpled. He reached out, hesitant, scared, reverent, and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The infant stirred, opened his eyes for a brief moment, and gripped Logan's finger. That's when my son broke completely. A sob tore through him, not the selfish kind he'd given earlier. Not the wounded pride of a man losing comfort. This was something deeper, purifying. The sound of a man rediscovering his own humanity. I didn't know, he whispered. Eliza, God, I swear I didn't know. I know, she whispered. That's why I'm here now. Samuel stepped back, giving them space. Joseph placed a hand on my shoulder, steady, warm. For the first time that night, I wasn't watching the collapse of something broken. I was watching something be born. Logan turned toward me, tears streaking down his face. Dad, he said, voice shaking, I want to be better. For him, for myself, for us. I stepped forward and placed my hands on both his shoulders. Then start now, I said. Right here. The baby yawned softly, a tiny sound, but somehow louder than the chaos of the entire night. Eliza smiled through tears. Logan wiped his face and looked at me with a quiet, trembling resolve I hadn't seen in years. Dad, he whispered, can we come home? My voice nearly broke. Yes, I said. Both of you. Above us, the night air seemed to soften like it knew a storm had finally passed. And as the ballroom emptied behind us, as the last echoes of betrayal faded into the cold Maryland air, I realized something. The story hadn't ended in destruction. It had ended in rebirth. Not for Brianna, not for the guests, not for the ones who watched and whispered, but for us, a father, a son, a second chance, and a new life sleeping quietly between us. Proof that even the deepest wounds can bloom into something worth keeping alive. When people ask whether I regret what happened that night, my answer is simple. The hardest truths save the most lives, especially our own.